Hello and welcome to Regulatory Solutions. My name is Cameron and I will be walking you through this video today. So in this video, we're going to talk about our new mapping features for the release of July 1, 2023. So this would be for the filing period ending June 30th of 2023. So we've added a ton of mapping features and we think a lot of them are really good. So we're going to go ahead and jump into it. So from the main dashboard, you would just come over here to map and hit main map. And you'll notice that it came up in this view. So the map now actually remembers your map state. So anything you were showing on the map before, it should return to that state when you come back into it. So this is a pretty basic state. If you don't have a state, so this is your first time coming into the map since this release, then it will come up either on the bounds of your area, or it may actually show the whole US and you'll have to zoom in on your area. So you'll see your towers clustered together on the map, and you'll be able to see that. But anyway, so a few things to note here is the layer control. We've actually added quite a few things to the layer control. And the layer control also serves as kind of a legend or a key to the map as well. So for instance, if I come in here and I turn on my unlicensed subscribers, you'll notice it has the little blue circle here that indicates that those are my subscribers. Now, it doesn't have a key or legend for everything. The subscribers with the red rings around them, we'll get into that in a minute. But certainly you can tell, probably which items belong to which layers on the map. So same thing, we have tracks. So a little gray square shows up to show you that that's representing the tracks on the map. We try not to repeat colors as much as possible, just so you can get a good idea of what's what. Just by looking at the map. So let's look at a couple of other things. So here's the CAF2 areas on the map, and then the RDOF on the map as well. So you do need to have this on if you want to zoom in and out and see the changes to the layers. So let's just do it one more time. And since the top layer is on, they redraw. So there you go. So anyway, we just wanted to let you know about that. And you can click on these and actually get information about each one of these little RDOF or CAF2 regions. And it tells you, who the bidder, state, of course, for this block group, latency, locations. Same thing here for the RDOF. It's going to tell you the information about those as well. So this could be helpful, especially if you're trying to go after new BEAD grants or something like that. So I'm going to go ahead and turn those off for now. And the other thing we want to look at that's new is our subscribers. So this is the subscriber sheet that you've uploaded to us. And let's just go over the unlicensed right now. So we have this unlicensed group. And this number here, if you hover over it, it's going to tell you what that means. So this is, the first number is the number of unmatched subscribers versus the number of matched subscribers. So what does that mean? That means subscribers that are matched to a BDC Fabric location. And ideally, we'd want the unmatched to be very low. Unfortunately, in a lot of cases, the addressing is not very well maintained in most billing systems, or it's just, not put in carefully. It doesn't really match up to the address standardization that is being used by the BDC Fabric. So it's very difficult to match those addresses. Also, anything like if you put apartments or suites or unit numbers and things like that in those addresses, it's going to completely ruin the match, because it has to be at least a 97% match in order for it to really be the same address. And if you put an apartment or suite, unit, space, anything like that, it's going to completely destroy the ability to match that address. So just be very careful when you're filling out that sheet, and try to filter that as much as possible so you don't have those, those address to, typically what are called address to fields in the same line as your address. So, and that will help you to get a match much easier. So we actually have developed a way for you to match these. Now, it could be tedious. Obviously, 1,724 of these, it's going to take a long time to do that. But let me just walk you through this process a little bit here. So here we have some areas. So any item here that has a red circle around it is an unmatched address. So you can see there's quite a few. And so we're going to go ahead and come down here to our locations and our fabric, and we're going to turn on our fabric. So these are the little red dots that are showing up. And what I want to do is, let's just zoom in a little bit. I'm probably going to lose my streets here, and that's fine, but you get the idea here. So let's just look at one of these. If we click on this, we're going to get an address. So here it is, 5168 FM 196. And let's look at this dot that's pretty close to it. Well, this one isn't. So 5225 doesn't really match. Let's try one of these. So here's another one, 5130 and 5130. Okay, so you notice that our customer here has addressed this as FM, which is a farm to market road in Texas, and 196. And that's typically how people refer to them. Unfortunately, the post office and now, of course, the BDC do not. They actually spell them out as farm road. So these are the same. So what we're going to do is if you click on this and you click link, you're going to notice it's saying select the fabric location you wish to link this subscriber, and then click the link to customer. So now if you can't find an address, or you don't think it's the right one, or you want to cancel it, you can always just cancel it and it will stop the linking process. Otherwise, if you click this, oops, we already had it linked. So if we click the dot next to it, the fabric dot, you'll notice it says link to customer 1414564. So now he identifies his customers by an ID. You can use a name. It doesn't really matter to us. So anyway, if you click this link, you'll notice now that went away, the little bar up here, and this circle turned from the red outline to just a regular blue. So these two are now linked. So what does that mean? Well, that just means that we now have a BDC location that's linked to this subscriber, and this BDC location will automatically be a qualified address when we go to do the report. Because it's a current subscriber, obviously it's qualified because you're already providing service. So let's just do one more. Let's look at this one. Maybe hopefully this will be right. 5171 FM 196. And if we click on the location, it is also 5171. So those are pretty close together. We're just going to go ahead and say link it. And then we're going to select our fabric location and link to customer. And there we go. Now we have this link. So it's pretty simple to link them, but obviously, like I said, 1,724 of these, it would take a long time to link these. It would be much easier to go and make sure your addressing is in better shape than what you see for this. So let's just try one more here. This is 5222, and this is also 5222. So let's just do a link. And we'll select this and link to customer. So that's how you do that. And you can do those. So if you have a handful of them, no big deal. Go ahead and link them. The difference is also some of these may qualify anyway, and we can check that, see which ones are serviceable. So if there's green dots that overlay on these are already qualified. So it doesn't really matter if we link them or not. But if you get to a case, where you don't have green dots, but you do have a customer close by, it's probably because we didn't qualify it based on the RF parameters because it's not in exactly the right location, or there could be a number of reasons why it didn't meet the qualification thresholds for us. Maybe our predicted signal was a couple dB higher than your settings, your RF throughput setting thresholds, and so we didn't think that would qualify. In the real world, obviously, predictions don't always match up, and so 3 or 4 dB one way or the other could make the difference in that. And so we just want to make sure you're getting as many of your current subscribers into the report as possible. And so we really need to make sure that we have good addresses in order to do that, and that they can match up. So moving on from there, let's go ahead and turn off some of these layers so it's not so cluttered. And I'll show you also. So if you have unlicensed, it's kind of the same. Unlicensed are a little bit lighter in color. They still have the red circles around them, to indicate that they are not linked to a BDC Fabric location. So, and we also have here, let me just show you here the tracks. We'll zoom out so you can see a better image of this. And the reason we put this in is because this causes us a lot of issues when we are doing the reports. And so let's go ahead and we're going to turn on our wireless bounds as well. So what we do is we take your access points that you put in the system. And one of the parameters of the access points is the radius that, kind of the maximum radius that they cover out to. And so after you put that in, we build this kind of merged together polygon, which we call your coverage extent, or your wireless boundary polygon. And so we use this for several things. One, we clip the BDC addresses against it. So, basically we don't consider anything outside of this area as a potential to be serviced by your wireless network, because you've told us that these are the extents of your network. So why would we look outside of it? And two, we use it to make sure that we have all your customers and tracks, right, to match up for the report. So the problem is, though, and you can see this one's very obvious, we have a lot of these subscribers, these are current subscribers in the system that are outside of this wireless coverage area. You might say, well, how is that? Well, who knows? It could be bad addressing. Maybe they have billing addresses that are in these areas that got accidentally put in as service addresses. Maybe they are one-off type situations where it's like a point-to-point link. There could be a number of reasons why these people exist, but they do, and it's almost every single ISP that we deal with has a few of these. And so this is a very good visual to see, hey, I've got a bunch of subscribers that for some reason are way outside of my coverage area. So maybe you need to come in here and look at these addresses and make sure, or go back to your billing system, make sure they're in the proper place and all that. We will do some analysis and send you information about this, but this actually causes us the most problems when we file your report. And so, because if you have customers out here that you're reporting, and they show up in your subscription file, right? Because the subscription file is by tract and service speed. So you're going to see all these people show up in these tracks with some kind of service speed in the subscription report. Well, they compare that when you upload this stuff, they compare that with your BDC reporting. And if you don't have basically any coverage or any BDC locations that fall within these tracks, qualified locations that fall within these tracks, they're going to say, well, you can't proceed because you have tracks, or you have subscribers in tracks with no BDC locations that are serviceable. So it causes an error. We have to go back and either figure out where these really belong, or we have to remove them if we can't figure out where they belong. And we don't really like doing that. We don't want to remove stuff. Obviously, we want this to be as accurate as possible. In most cases, it might be, a handful, 1, 2, maybe 10 that we have to remove. But still, that's 10 more than we'd like to. So in this case, this is going to be, roughly 20 or so addresses that we'd have to pull out because we just don't have coverage and we just don't know where these people really are within your network. So this is a really good tool to figure out if you've got, your subscribers in the right place. And we would encourage you to come in and use this once you upload your subscribers. So that's just that part of it. So that's one of the newest utilities and tools that we think is really going to be helpful to you. So let's go ahead and turn those off. We also have, of course, our regular network, which is the same thing we've seen before. If you haven't seen this, obviously, so active APs, we'll zoom in a little bit here so you can see. What we do is we look at all your frequencies on all your APs, and then we take all the unique frequencies, and then we assign each one a color. And so it's random. So every time you come in here, these colors are going to change. Eventually, we're going to allow you to set those colors for those frequencies yourself. So you can use this for maybe some frequency mapping type stuff. And the better view of that, if we turn off our kind of uniform radius APs here, we're going to turn on our APs by frequency. And this shows you the radial extent. So I was talking about that radius before, telling you where, how we determine, the coverage boundary. And this is how we do it. So these are all the radial extents of the access points. And if we overlay this wireless bound on top of it, you can see it matches up exactly. So if I turn this off, turn it back on, so it's the same basic view. So that's basically it. And if we use our unlicensed as well, and when we turn these off, so you can see we've got a wireless coverage boundary that maps up to our AP boundaries. So that's just for your information. Obviously, this is really busy. It's hard to really glean much information from it. And so, it's just one of those things that it's really more for us developing this wireless bounds. Now, if you could shade your own, and we give you the ability to toggle APs on by frequency, by specific frequency, then that will be a much better utility for determining interference and things like that. So that is coming, but it's just not here yet. So we've already kind of looked at the wireless bounds here, and this would be any boundaries. So if you've uploaded if you have fiber or cable or any hardwired bounds, this is going to show you those boundaries as well. And this is uploaded either polygons or routes, and the routes we turn into polygons based on a buffer. And so that's what you're seeing kind of here. And we'll get into that in just a little more detail in a minute. But this would be your fiber bounds areas. And if you had cable or DSL or whatever, and they all come up in a different color. So let's look here again at our locations. So we do have our fabric locations, right? And if you watched the other demo video, you will have seen that you don't have to upload your fabric data anymore. We actually have a nationwide license, and so all we need is your confirmation that you have gone ahead and applied for and received your license for us to be able to process your data. And what we do, again, we clip your our national fabric database against your wireless bounds. And so if we zoom out a little bit and look at this, you'll see that all these points fall within these wireless boundaries here. And so that's why we can't do any analysis for those ones that are in those tracks that lie outside, because we just clip against this wireless boundary. And so those, as far as we're concerned, those locations don't exist for your network. So we don't even look at them. So you either need to extend your bounds or look at your addresses or whatever to correct that. So. And then, of course, we have our serviceable locations. Once we do the analysis, you can see all the locations that we deem serviceable. And there's a little bit of difference here on these points. So you'll see the ones that are just green dots, and you have green dots with a dark green ring around them. The ones with the dark green ring are the subscribers that you've given us that don't qualify based on our RF stuff. But since they're current subscribers, we're going to put them in the report. So that's what these are. These are actually the addresses that matched from the, from your subscription file or from your subscribers file. So these are the addresses that actually match the BDC, but did not qualify RF-wise for us. And again, there could be a number of reasons. The location isn't just quite right, where you actually have the antenna, or maybe you had a taller pole or something that you use, or a higher gain antenna, or it just didn't, because our predictions aren't obviously exact to the real world. It may have been a couple dB off that just bumped it over a threshold. So there's a number of reasons you could get these, but for sure, we do really, really do want to get your current subscribers in there. And so that address matching is key for that. So, and then fiber. I know his fiber bounds look different when I showed it to you before because I'm actually using this to test, and we were drawing polygons and routes and stuff. And so, but these are actually his fiber customers here that this customer really has. And he gave us a route, and we created a buffer, and that's how we were able to determine these. So you can see your fiber. And so the dots always should match up with the bound colors as well. So this same dots, same color for the dots as the bounds for fiber. So now we also have this new section. This is a new thing here where we have user created polygons and routes. And what these are, we're going to get into this in just a second here. But basically, these are the routes that you create, or fiber, not fiber necessarily. It could be cable or DSL or whatever, but polygons or routes that you create for those technologies using our map. And so how you do that, we have this new little handy dandy tool set over here. And you just click this. The top one is just the normal map. So that's what we're in right now. You can see the current map mode is normal. And if you ever want to get out of one of these other modes, you just would click this one to take it back to normal. The next one is our qualify, and we'll go over that in just a minute after we go through the polygons. But this allows you to qualify any point on the map. It doesn't have to be a BDC location anymore. So you can actually just click anywhere you want on the map and qualify that point. So, and then we have our create polygon, which we're going to look at, and the create route, which we can look at here in just a minute, and our distance tool. So, or ruler, we call it. But so let's look at the create polygon, since we were talking about this user polygon and route section on the layer control. Let me show you a couple first. So we can toggle these on. And so these are different polygons that we've created. And then we can also have routes that we've created, right? So these would be just basically individual routes for fiber, cable, DSL, whatever, right? And so once we have these in here, once we create these routes, we can, if we look at our fiber bounds, because these were fiber routes that we created, you can see how we created this buffer around these routes to create a polygon, which would encompass homes around these. So this is how we actually do the analysis once you create these routes. You could, of course, draw your own polygons as a shape, and that would be just fine. We can use those too, but you can do your routes as well. So let's go ahead and turn these off, and we'll create a new one just to show you how that works. So I'm going to turn all these layers off, and we're going to turn the fiber bounds off, because when we create them and specify technology, it creates it as a network boundary as well, but it groups them all together. So anyway, so let's look at this. So let's create a new polygon here. And so it's going to bring up a little window for us to give some details, and we're going to specify a technology. Let's just call it fiber, since he already has some of that. And we'll just call it fiber test poly or something. And so we got to give it some speeds, because we want to do our analysis based on speeds for the BDC filing. And then we're going to save this. And so now whatever we create here is going to be added into a file with those speeds. So let's just, if you want, you can come up here and you can toggle on your hybrid layers. You can actually see the homes, and we'll zoom in here. Oops, a little too far. Okay, so let's just say I'm covering these 4 blocks here. So I can just start up here, and I want to make sure I encompass all the homes, along those blocks, just to make sure. We'll ignore these little homes down here for now. And when you get to where you want to be done, you can either click the point you started with, or you can just double click anywhere, and that will finish your polygon. So now you've got this kind of red polygon here on the map. If you messed up, you can come in here and hit edit, and then you can drag these points around and then save them. Or if you mess one of those up, let's say I move this over here, and no, I really didn't want to do that. I can revert that. It does leave these little points, but they do get ignored. Or you can just cancel the edit altogether and then start over again. And that's another way to do it. So once you have edited your points, let's just say I want to, let me It's really, I do want to encompass this little house down here. Okay, I've edited that. I'm going to save my edits, and now my polygon looks a little different. So once I do this, I'm going to save this, and now it is saved as a new polygon. Now it disappeared off the map because obviously I don't have it yet, and it should appear in my layer control. If it doesn't, you can always do a quick refresh. And this will be a good way to show you that we're going to come back to the same place on the map. So here we are on the map again, came back to the same place we were at, the same layers we had selected. And now here's my fiber test poly. We'll make sure that this appears once you save it, but if for whatever reason you don't see it, you can always do the refresh like we did. So here's this fiber test poly that we just created. And if we want to see the other ones that are nearby, we can zoom out a little bit and see how these come on. And then once you do this, we will run this against the fabric and show you the points within these files. So that's how you would do a fiber polygon. Now, if we do a polyline, it's a similar thing. So you would select again, your technology. You can name it. So we'll call this test demo line or something. A route. Let's call it a route. And again, let's just put in some speeds for it. And here you also, because of the fact that we are creating a buffer around those routes to encompass the homes that you want to service, you need to put in the buffer distance. So 200 feet is pretty good. That's pretty typical, I think. If you go further out than that, if the homes are further off the street than 200 feet, then you can put in whatever you want there. But 200 feet is usually pretty good. It will pretty much encompass the homes on both sides of the street in most cases. So obviously your mileage may vary where you are. So we're going to save this, and let's just zoom in again on a little area here, and let's just say we're going to run down this street and come down here. But we're going to finish this, and then it's going to let us keep drawing lines. So we're going to add another one and say it comes over here. And then we're going to add one more, and we're just going to end it here at this other polygon. And then you just double click it or click the end point again to stop. So once you do that, of course, if you want to edit, it gives you the points to edit. We're just going to cancel that edit. And if you want to delete it, if you hit delete, it's going to wipe the whole thing out. But we're not going to do that. We're going to hit save. And then once again, it didn't show up, so we're going to just do a quick refresh on it. And if we come back again and we look at our thing, here is our test demo route that we just created. Now this also tells us, for the routes, it tells us how many feet that we're running along that route. So there's our route that we created on the map. Now, if we want to look at our fiber bounds again, here's the buffer that was created around it in order to service the homes. So you can see this 200-foot buffer pretty much encompassed all these homes around it. And so that's what we use to do the analysis. And so if we were to turn on our fabric here, you would see that any of these red dots that lie within these boundaries would now be considered serviceable by fiber. So we don't do the analysis runs at varying times. It doesn't, it's not instant. So it will take a little time for that to show up. So we just wanted to let you know that. So that's how we do the polygons and polylines, and those can be very useful. So if you don't want to go into Google Earth or something, you can basically just come in here and create your own polygons or polylines for your areas, and we will use those. So it puts them into the same table that we use when you upload the polygons to us, either as a KML or shapefile. So it's just actually less work for us if you guys come in and create them here instead of uploading the KML. So that's those features. Next, let's look at our let's see, our qualify feature where we can qualify any points on the map. So once you click this, It's going to give you a CPE height. This will use your default that you have set, but let's just go ahead and put a number in here if you want to change that. And actually, I clicked on the map, so it did the qualification already. So a couple of things to note here. If you haven't seen this before, the qualification, when you do it, when you click on the map, it runs and does this qualification. And it creates a new layer here called qualification, and it has paths and APs. A lot of time it gets really busy, kind of just like our AP by frequency did, and so it's kind of hard to tell. I mean, it this one's not so bad because it's only got 4 or 5 APs that qualify to this point. But when you get in a much busier place, it's kind of hard to see everything. So I recommend turning this off and just looking at the paths. So let's just do another one just so you can see that what that looks like. I'm just going to click a random point on the map, and it's going to go out and do a qualification. I'm going to turn off these tile layers. So here I'm clicking a point, and it does take a few seconds to come back, but this point obviously did not qualify either. And how do I know that fast? Well, the dashed lines on the map tell me. So if it's a dashed line, it means that AP did not qualify to service this location. So let's try to find a point that does have one, and I can show you the difference there. So here's one that actually does not qualify either. So let's find another one. We'll just keep clicking around until we find something. Okay, here's one that does. So here's the difference. If you look at the dashed lines, they don't qualify, but there is one here that looks like it's a double dashed line. And what that really is it's a solid line, because the APs that qualify have a solid line that goes from the tower or access point to the point that you're trying to look at. But we overlay the dash lines on top of it, so it kind of looks like a double dash line. But if you ever see a solid line or a double dash line like this, or maybe it could even be a triple dash line, depending on how many APs actually qualified or didn't qualify from this location. But anyway, if you see one that's not just dashed, then something there qualified, and typically it's going to be this top, whatever this top graph is here. And so and if you look at this, we can see, okay, this is, click on usually it's green. We usually do a green color for the ones that do qualify. And for sure, so this has a minimum install signal based on our RF throughput settings of -74. And he can deliver 500 by 100 at that speed. And his received signal here was -71. So he's definitely under that threshold, and so he's going to be able to deliver 500 by 100 at this location. So that's something good to know. And so here, if we click another point, let's just look at some of these that didn't qualify and see why. So if we click on any of the lines here, we can see, so this one, total received signal, not good at all. So that was not good. So and also you can do some analysis over here on the graphs. I keep clicking points and it wants to requalify. So we'll just find one here for a second. And let's go back to kind of where we were, because there was some good information in there. So here's one. So if you look at the map, you'll be able to see that the qualified graphs here on the side, you'll be able to see that we're actually reporting the clutter value here for you as well. And this is a new feature on the graphs. So as you move along the graph, it will actually show you what the clutter values are. So the second option down, or the second thing down in the legend as you move along the map, is showing you the clutter, and it tells you the category at the end. So what the little info window there that's changing as you move along is showing you is the distance, or the elevation, I mean, above the of the terrain, right? So it has your terrain, and then it has your clutter, and the elevation of the clutter, its category, which in this case is built up, this red category. And then your Fresnel clearance there at that point is that another elevation. And then your 60% Fresnel clearance is another elevation. Of course, your line of sight is the top point on that graph. So As you move along here, there's a couple things to notice. Well, of course, the clutter category is changing. So we just went from built up to grass right there. And here we're going from built up to bare ground. And again, built up. And then here we have trees. And so you can see how that's changing as you move along the graph. If you look in the map window, also as I'm moving along this graph, you'll see a little crosshair that's moving along, and that shows you where you are along the profile on the graph as well. And so if you were actually to look at something, say like our clutter, these are the same categories here. So this clutter legend that shows up here matches the colors here. So here I am on a little bit of trees right there. And if we zoom in on the map at that point, probably going to be a little bit of tree. And for sure, as we get right here on the crosshair, there's some tree. So this really gives you an idea of how accurate 10-meter clutter is because you can actually see, so this is probably 1 or 2 trees. And in fact, if we turn on our hybrid and then we overlay our clutter on top of that, and we zoom in just a little bit more, for sure, there's like one little stand of trees there. It might be 2 trees or something, but it picked it up. And so that's, to me, that's pretty impressive. The fact that you can pick up, just a couple of trees in 10 meters. And obviously this is kind of a downtown area. So there's lots of what's called build up. But something that we mentioned before, I think in the other demo, was that you have to be careful with these clutter settings, especially the built up, right? When you do these, because everything that's not vegetation is pretty much classified as built up. And so you can see like right here, this is a parking lot. Well, obviously a parking lot isn't 10 feet above the ground, but there's a building right here that's probably 10 feet or more above the ground. So it's really difficult to determine, what the clutter is there when it's built up. And that's why we don't recommend you putting in necessarily building heights for that built up category. So, unfortunately, that's just the way that they process the clutter and the way it comes out. And you can see that it's built up. This red is all along the streets, parking lots, structures, whatever. So it's a little difficult to get super accurate in that area, but it does, really pick up the vegetation well and like the open spaces and things that are not part of, say like the concrete or something. So just some things to be aware of there. So let's go ahead and turn this off and we'll go over a couple more of these images. Let's go ahead and set our map back to regular normal mode and let's cancel the qualify. So here we are back to our normal map. I'm going to zoom out a little bit, and the last thing I'll show you here is our ruler. So this is great, especially if you're trying to maybe look at where you're going to put some fiber and how much distance that's going to cover, or you're just trying to figure out distance between a couple points. If you do the distance tool and then you just start clicking, it's going to tell you at each point along here, what your distance is, and then of course your total distance. And it tells you on the little pop-up bubbles, of course, and then also down here at the bottom of the map, it's telling you what the distance of the current path you're on, and then the total distance also. So basically, you get a couple areas where you can see what's going on there. And again, if you just double click this, it ends the tool and you can see these, and then what your total path length is there. So for your measurement. And if you want to start it over, you just go back to the normal map. You can also do multiple distances here too. So if I did, let's just do a few points. I'm going to stop it. And then if I start clicking again, it's going to basically pick up a new path, right? And show me that one. And then I can, do as many of these as I want to. So I can just keep doing distances all day if I decide I want to do that. So now I've got 3 different paths, 3 different totals, of course, and then all the points along the way. So, and if they're covering each other, you can just zoom in a little more and they spread each other out. And so you can see what they are. So that's basically it on the distance tool. If you go back to normal, clears the map, and there you go. So the last thing I'll show you is the search. This will be expanded probably as we go along here in a couple of weeks as well. We don't have a pure address search yet, and that's what I'm talking about when I say it'll be expanded. We are adding an address search, so you can just look up any address, and that will use Bing's address lookup. Reason we chose Bing is because it's just seems to find addresses better than Google, and I don't know why, especially in rural areas. Google really struggles in places like New Mexico and Wyoming and kind of rural places like that. So Bing seems to be able to find them. Not sure why, but so that's what we went with. But anyway, for now, there's no address search, but you can either search locations, which are the BDC locations, or you could search for APs or towers. I'm sure you know where your APs and towers are, but just in case you didn't, you could search for them. So let's just go ahead and put in a location here, 106.88. Okay, so I just typed in 106.11 here, and obviously the 11 didn't really. Let's try an 88, and that should, 106.9. Then we'll do that and see what it comes up with. So as you type, it should be bringing up a type ahead list of suggestions for you. And so you can then choose one. You can also, if you're not trying to find the ID, so if you're just trying to find an address, so there's an address that we can use. So let's just try like 511, and let's see what it comes up with. So 511 is going to come up with 511 County Road. That's also going to come up with this 511 West North Street. 511 existed also in the ID here. So you can see all the iterations of 511 that might come up. So you can look for a county road, farm road, whatever. So if I say 511 county, obviously that strips it down a little bit more. So if I look for this, it's going to center me right on this. And if I come back here and go to my layer control and turn on my fabric, we should be able to see the location that it centered on. And for some reason I'm having a delay in the street tiling, but you can see that it centers it right on the fabric location that you're interested in. And if we turn on these roads, now we'll turn on the hybrid and see if we can get a map. So there's where it was. It was on this little farmhouse right here. So, and again, you can see 2511 County Road is where it centered us. So now we could always, again, qualify to this address if we wanted to see if this one qualified. You could also, if you've already run these, you could see if it's serviceable just by clicking this, and yeah, a green dot shows up on top of it. So it is serviceable. But if we wanted to see how it's serviceable, we can look at this, and we're going to turn off our qualify APs, and we're just going to look at this one and see. So there were actually a couple of APs here that it thought could service it from the same tower. Obviously, you want the one that's kind of the higher signal, which would be this neg 81. And that is serviceable according to this customer because his minimum threshold, probably using LTE, is -90 here. So that does service at that location. So that's basically how we do that. And go ahead and cancel this. And we're going to go ahead and go back to our normal map. And if you wanted to look at other locations, of course you could. Nothing wrong with that. So that's basically the map features. And hopefully we've provided a lot of useful tools for you guys. If there's anything else you'd like to see, you can certainly reach out to us and see if we can add some additional features to the map. But for now, that's